And Dave Sussman back with you at America's Voice News, and I'm delighted to have with us Brent Bozell, the Media Research Center. You've seen him all over Fox News and all other publications, newspapers, and generally talking about the media and frankly how one-sided we're seeing the media has been for years, but especially in the past couple of years. This week we saw whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Instagram deplatforming conservatives. What's going on right now in the era of free speech or lack thereof?
It's the era of intolerance. You've got three kinds of media. You've got the old media, which was the networks, newspapers, magazines, and the like. Then you had new media, which was websites, blogosphere, talk radio, and that sort of stuff. And now you've got social media, which is the newest form, which is direct conversation. I think conservatives posed a real threat to the tech companies because conservatives were starting to dominate social media with tens of millions of people on a regular basis. And what you've got is Palo Alto saying this will not stand and we're not going to allow it on our platforms. So they've come up with all manner of different ways of playing the game to try to lump reputable conservative organizations around a handful of real clickbait organizations, which by the way exist on the left as well. So you have Facebook is a great example of this. Facebook says it's the open marketplace of ideas, but they've got 15,000 employees now monitoring content. They've got rule books 1,400 pages long and 500 pages devoted to the word hate, which is all about conservatives. So there's a real intolerance taking place. There's a real censorship taking place, and it's all of them. It is them, it's Twitter, it's Google, it's YouTube, and now you got the service companies. Now you've got Microsoft involved with their NewsGuard feature where they give a green light or a red light to that organization depending on what they want to do. You've got PayPal deciding who it won't service with credit card application. They won't do some Christian groups. They won't do Act for America, Brigitte Gabriel's group. You've got Apple. Apple is avidly raising money for the SPLC. Chase Bank won't process credit cards for gun rights organizations. So you're starting to see their service companies as well getting into the act. This is dangerous because it's not in the United States. This is worldwide. And when you start talking about worldwide censorship, you're talking the greatest threat to freedom worldwide in the history of man.
You talk about companies as huge as Facebook and Silicon Valley. They are just massive. They're underpinning, you're talking about billions of users, okay? They've created these algorithms. So when you see right of center people this week of Paul Joseph Watson or Laura Loomer or other folks that are out there that have been considered marginalized by mainstream media, a lot of people will say, well, that's only because the algorithms are now kicking in. It's not individuals sitting down at Facebook and just picking and choosing victims. Do you agree with that?
Not exactly. You've got Google. I mean, I have visited with executives of Google who say you can't manipulate the algorithmic data on there. They testified that you can't manually play with their algorithms. But in fact, they have been playing manually with their algorithms. Daily Caller called them out on it and caught them. So they are tinkering with these things, and I think it is very dangerous. They will look at a couple of far-right groups, and they will lump many people into it once they get the slippery slope going. But interestingly enough, finally, after we said for months, why was Louis Farrakhan still on there? They barred him, but the left is now calling him a right-wing figure.
Yeah.
So it's always the right.
Is it? I know.
Next they'll finally get around to barring Antifa or Black Lives Matter, and when they do, they'll probably accuse them of being right-wing groups.
The right-wing groups as well. Is this just stupidity at a low level at Washington Post or whoever said that Farrakhan is right-wing?
That was CNN. No, it's not stupidity.
What is it?
That is, look, what's happening in the press today is deliberate with absolutely no semblance of any devotion to objectivity, or in many cases to truth. They believe ends justify the means. They have become radicalized. You don't hear anyone in the news media defending themselves as objective.
Right.
They're not even trying anymore. Their goal is to take down Donald Trump individually, and then the conservative movement collectively. I've never seen anything like it. It started about 5 years ago. I've seen nothing like this in my lifetime.
Okay, you and Media Research Center have been around for a long time. I remember in the early 90s when Herbert Walker Bush was running for re-election and Clinton was on the ticket. I remember seeing a pickup truck and at the back it said, "Don't believe the liberal media." There's always been a perception of liberal bias in the media. But where has this come from today, where you've seen in the past 5 years that you just stated that it is mushroomed into what we're seeing right now with this attack on free speech, so to speak?
Well, thanks for the plug. That was our bumper sticker.
That was yours.
It was ours.
Wow.
The whole campaign has been ours. I think this is the media. I agree with Rush. The media are the leaders of the Democratic Party, not the other way around. The media are what decides what is and isn't acceptable on the far left. Look at the media's support of AOC.
Right.
This is a fringe gas bag of a bartender. I mean, just think what Daniel Webster must be thinking with this girl in the White House, and yet you've got the media serving her all this gravitas. I think they've become so weaponized that in a way it's gone to their heads. Who would have thunk that today I might be pining for the good old days of Tom Brokaw and Dan Rather and the late Peter Jennings? But when you look at all their biases, and they were hard liberal bias, I'll take them any day over what's today, because then it was bias, now it's censorship. Then it was debate, and it was twisting facts a little bit. Now it's outright lying. Then it was wanting to win the argument. Now it's wanting to destroy. So
how do we get here? We're at AFA, American Freedom Alliance today. We're talking about the march through the institutions by the left. How did we get to this point?
I think it's social media. I think that if you didn't have social media, if you were still where you were before social media, look, the media were completely marginalized at the time, and I think they still are. And here's the interesting thing: in 2016, 91% of the American people believed that the news media were out to get Donald Trump. That means the Democrats also believed it. So people say to me, well, how well are you doing if the media are more liberal than ever before? It's never been how liberal they are. The question is, how believed are they? When you look at social media, you've also seen a huge backlash. Interestingly enough, the last 3 presidential campaigns were all decided by social media. Mm-hmm. Obama won with Facebook, both of his campaigns, and Trump won with Twitter. So people who say social media doesn't have power, think 3 times about that one. So what happened? If you look at the polling data, after constant 90, 91, 92% negative coverage, never seen this in history, month after month after month after month, almost unanimous negative coverage, no matter how well the economy is doing. Trump's numbers have gone up.
We hear a lot about, because of the Mueller report, Russia, although there was no collusion with this administration now, we know that, but they did have an involvement in pushing the narrative through using social media in the 2016 election. Do you fear that? Are you concerned about it from a media research standpoint, about how that's going to impact 2020?
Yeah, I am, but I don't think that they played any role in 2016. The last I heard it was $200,000 of digital ads.
Right.
That's going to affect politics for about 14 seconds these days. So no, I don't think they had an impact. However, I think they could, and I think they're having an impact in marginalizing the public debate. I think they're throwing gasoline on both sides, on the fires on both sides. I do believe, you're already seeing it. There've already been evidence of these fringe things that have been set up.
Right.
So they're doing it. They're causing trouble. God only knows who else is doing this. I just hope our side's doing it to them.
Well, there's certainly a lot of folks that are working really, really hard looking at the granular data and how to use that, and it's getting right down into individuals, right, where you live, the block that you live on, and how to get people.
But I tell you how else is working, and this is, conservatives have caught them time and again, where they're using state-of-the-art technology to project things that aren't there. Look at that massive boycott against Rush Limbaugh. With hundreds of thousands of people all over the country outraged by something he did 4 or 5 years ago. Turned out to be 17 people with state-of-the-art technology. Look at the whole Sleeping Giants operation that has cost Breitbart 198 subscribers. It's going after Tucker Carlson. It's going after Laura Ingraham. Again, a massive outpouring of outrage at what they're doing. Turned out it was one person in Germany and one person, I think, here on the West Coast. That's all it was, but state-of-the-art technology. So there's a lot of gamemanship going on in the far left, where they're projecting something that just isn't there.
So that brings me to another question that I have for you, because you guys at Media Research, what you guys are taking a look at is obviously bias in the media. This is what you've been doing for years. Another organization that's out there that comes out under the guise of doing what you do, taking a look at bias, is Media Matters. But they are a Soros-funded, Clinton-funded, okay, David Brock runs it, very, very, very much on the left. What you're talking about, the boycotts, a lot of that stems from a small group of individuals at Media Matters, and then they create this snowball effect on social media. Do you think they have an impact today? And if they have an impact, how does that impact future elections coming up?
Oh, they do. And there is a big difference, besides the fact that we're conservative and they are radical left.
Right.
The big difference is we tell the truth and they don't.
I can't even consider you conservative. I consider you mainstream.
No, I'll call myself a conservative. I'm a conservative.
You personally, but it's
data,
right of center.
The data are not.
Right.
The data are not. The research is there. In 32 years, no one's ever called into question a single study we've done. We've done thousands of them. You can't argue the data. We don't make things up. Media Matters was set up, by the way, by Hillary Clinton, funded by George Soros, to fight us, to be the answer to us. What they tried these public campaigns, and they really didn't get anywhere because the public wasn't on their side. Then they came up with something very smart, which was feed things to their friends in the national media without their fingerprints on there. So they just fed things to CNN, fed stories to NBC, fed stories to ABC and CBS, and they ran them as objective truth. But it was Media Matters that was funneling them to them. Have they done they've done boycotts, and they've been very successful given the money that they have, which is gazillions of dollars from the far left. I mean, that Bush could be successful with the kind of money they have. And so, that's just the reality. The far left is outgunning us financially, probably by a factor of 100 to 1.
100 to 1?
I would say so.
Wow. Last question for you, because I know you're going to be going on here shortly. Journalism, the state thereof. What are we looking at in the future? I talk about this in my show all the time. My son is about to go to college. He wants to go into journalism. Are we seeing will we see an ebb and a flow, or will continue going in this direction that is so concerning to all of us right of center types?
I think we are rapidly leaving the journalism era altogether, and we're going into the information age. If you want something, if you want to know what's going on in Israel today with the attacks from Hamas, you don't wait for the 6:30 news. You reach into your pocket and you find this thing called a cell phone.
Right.
And you pull up the video, and over 50% of all video, whether it's laptops, movies, TVs, desktops, anything, comes on the video on your telephone. So anything you want is on your smartphone, instant information. So the news era, and it does trouble me, because I think so much is superficial. It is just rip and read headlines that you're going to get. No one's going deep into the issues. News. Look at the 24-hour news cable networks. I guess you don't have more than an hour and a half of real news on any of them anymore, because it's all talk that's going on, which is fine. You and I can have a conversation, but you're not reporting news right now, nor do you think you are.
Who selects the news today?
You know, Leslie Medgley was Walter Cronkite's longtime producer. He had a great line in his book, How Many Words Do You Want? The first half of his book was devoted to the print media. And he said in the print media, the editor says what news is. And then when he went to his career in television, he said, in television, the producer decides what news is. And that's really what it is. There is no such thing as objective news. It doesn't exist.
A lot of people are saying it's coming from the blue verified check marks now on Twitter that are quote-unquote journalists that are talking amongst themselves, and that stems up to become mainstream news.
Do you believe that a woman is not a man?
No.
Huh? Do you believe that a woman is not a man?
Yes. Okay. A woman is not a man.
Okay, try saying that on Twitter. You're going to get banned for that.
No, I know that.
There was a professor who was banned for that.
Yeah.
You can't say the words Bruce Jenner without being banned because Bruce is now a dead name. And so you've got to say Caitlyn, or you're banned. This is thought control that's going on. This is a gay agenda, but there are anti-NRA agendas. There's certainly an anti pro-life agenda that's coming in various ones of these. So what they're telling you, and if you pay attention to what Facebook has been saying, they've been saying the European parliamentary government is superior to the constitutional government of the United States. They're also saying the European model that puts virtue first and freedom second, their definition of virtue, is superior to the American model that puts freedom first and virtue second. So understand that when they're looking at things like the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, this is a worldwide company. They don't believe in them. So what do? You shut down speech, First Amendment. You shut down pro-gun groups, Second Amendment, because you don't believe them.
This is scary stuff. This
reality,
really is.
It's reality.
Yeah.
It's reality.
Yeah. And you see the trajectory. You're optimistic, pessimistic?
I am optimistic. I'm optimistic because I will never lose faith in the American people to make the right moves. And there are some recourses you have. I do believe that you have to look at antitrust legislation. You've got to break these companies up. And by the way, that's a conservative position.
Yeah.
It says you've got to have competition. And you can try to be competitive with Facebook. Instagram they swallowed them. YouTube tried to compete with Google. Google swallowed them. Apple's got $1 trillion in cash. What are you going to do? If they want something, they get it.
I know I said this was my last question 5 minutes ago, but I have to ask you about this. Do you believe in whether it's trust busting or going in and taking a look at a company like Facebook or a company like Apple or Google, $1 trillion organizations? How does even the free market compete against that?
It doesn't. This is not the free market. This is why the conservative position is antitrust, to allow competition. You don't have a competitive thing. Somebody made a statement. I was on Fox a few weeks ago, and a liberal professor before me, made an observation I hadn't thought about. He said, what would happen if you broke Facebook in half and allowed competition? You would have a rush of capital into the market. You would have people hired by the thousands to have jobs at a new entity if it could only be allowed to compete with Facebook. Same thing with all the other ones.
But isn't that government imposed?
Google. No, it's just the opposite. Google, it's breaking up. Google controls 92.5% of search engines worldwide. How is that competitive? Google, according to a study that was recently completed at Stanford by a non-conservative, Google has the power with its search engine to affect up to 80% of the undecided vote in any election. Now, you think, my friend, how powerful that is. That decides presidential campaigns if they want to pull the lever of the power that they have. So when I look at that, I just say that's too big, too powerful. It's outside the system of government that we have. It's almost like a fourth branch of government. They have got to be stopped. They're too big.
Tell us about Media Research Center.
I formed Media Research Center 32 years ago as a conservative organization. I make no bones about that. But looking at the proposition that you've got a left-wing media that does not project itself for what it is, I believed that if you could tell that story to the American people, you could cause market forces to come forward. Rush started a year after us, and Rush has given us credit for setting the stage for his show. Rush did his show, and Rush has been, think about this, first place for 31 years. This is one of the greatest free enterprise stories in American history, with thousands of people competing against him on radio. He's been number one by far for 31 years. Extraordinary guy too. And I've I have a new book that's coming out next month, and he doesn't know it, but I dedicated it to him.
Very nice. What's the name of the book?
It's Unmasked: The Media's War on Donald Trump.
Okay.
It's going to be a good one.
And where can folks find Media Research Center?
MRC.org, or our blog site, Newsbusters, or CNS News, or all sorts of other stuff.
Brent Bozell, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, and good luck with everything you're doing. We'll be right back.